Afternoon, councillors and staff. It's gone 4:30, so we'll open our extraordinary meeting. Firstly, by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land we met on this afternoon, the Ngunnawal and Wiradjuri people, and I humbly pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Housekeeping, we all know where the exit is to the door to the chambers and to right to and out onto the footpath and wait further instructions. Our meeting is being live streamed in accordance with our live stream policy, which basically means that anything you say will be picked up and live streamed to any of the community watching. So you're advised to be cautionary about anything you say, otherwise they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Public forum, we have nil. We go to attendance and apologies. We have apologies, I believe, from Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Walker. Moved Councillor Manchester and seconded Councillor Flannery. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Disclosures of interest. Take that as a no. That takes us to item 6, which is General Manager's report, which is the quarterly budget review. And I'll hand over to the General Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report before you, the first report tonight, there are two reports, one being the quarterly budget review for March, which does impact the 2021-22 budget, which is also being considered here tonight. These were reports prepared for the ordinary council meeting of last week, and at the request of councillors unanimously asked for a deferral of a week. This still enables us to meet our statutory obligations of 28 days public exhibition, should it be resolved tonight to put these documents on public exhibition. I will note these documents are exactly the same documents and reports that you were presented with during the course of the ensuing week. We did do some more quality controls. On page 40, actually, sorry, I'm jumping into the next report. I'll leave that. We'll stay with the quarterly budget review. The major item here is the deferral of some capital works to the following year, and they are then incorporated into that budget. Welcome any questions.
Thank you. Before we do that, I might just note we have got a recommendation there, and do I have a mover and a seconder for the item before we start discussion? Move Councillor Manchester, thank you. Seconded Councillor Armstrong. Okay. Questions in regard to the matter that's before us, Council? Councillor Manchester.
I did have a question, but I think it's probably been answered by the General Manager, is that there's a fair bit of capital works in the sewer, mainly in the sewer and water, that were deferred. They've all been transferred over.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll pass to the Director of Infrastructure to guide you, which leads from this March report into the next report. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, General Manager and the councillors. Yes, we have had a really hard look at the water and sewer and have been preparing a significant body of work where we're out to tender or about to be out to tender for significant works in the water and sewer space. And that will be transferred to the next year so that we can deliver on that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Armstrong.
Mr Mayor, I have a number of questions here.
Councillor.
And given that we're in debate, I'm wondering whether we should resolve the going to committee for these questions to be asked.
Councillor Armstrong, I think it's a great idea. Moves that we move into committee.
I'll move that way.
Someone like to second that? Second to Councillor Flannery. Thank you. All those in favour?
All right.
Thank you, councillors. We will now move into committee to discuss these questions. Councillor Armstrong, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A number of questions. I'll start a reference to page 3 of 12, item 106276, the Brungle Creek beautification. I noticed that there's only 18,900 spent, a reduction of the budget by a bit over $500,000, 172,685 to be spent. Will that be spent by the end of the financial year?
Through to the Director of Infrastructure.
At this stage, I don't believe that all that money will be expended. We do have some expenditure that's gone through since the March, because this is the March quarterly budget, but we have a firmer view on that, which we will bring back.
Okay, Mr. General Manager, I think that we probably need to get some updates, given that this report is as of the end of March, and we're considering it in the first week of June. We're almost at the end of the period. There are a number of items that have that in the same situation. The Jugiong swimming pool, I noticed that there's 100% of that being taken out to move forward. Great. That'll provide funding for the works and for further discussion. But I note that there's 32% overspend on the item 600322 Young Netball Courts Rejuvenation. Where will that $13,000 come from?
Through the Mayor, regarding the netball courts and the rejuvenation, the over expenditures to be funded by the under expended works in the netball control room.
Wonderful, thank you. Over the page, on page 8 of 12, there are 106,460 through 106,462 rural local roads reseals. I noticed that there's no expenditure there at all. Sorry, there's expenditure there, but nowhere near the amount that's budgeted, yet there's no variation. Will those works be completed? Or have they been completed?
Through the Mayor, I'm just searching my notes here for that aspect.
I guess the same goes for 106,471, the Burrawa Local Roads gravel resheeting. It's only 25% spent. The following 106,472 Harden is 66% expended. And much to my great disgust, the Young Rural Roads Resheeting Program appears to be only 21% spent and $500,000 potentially unspent. So if we can get some updates on those, whether those works are progressing or not, that'd be.
Through the Mayor, I'll work backwards. The Young resheet currently is expenditures about looking at 250,000, and we're looking at having about 80% of that work completed. We think conservatively by the end of the year. We're hoping to get more, but we're having some issues with truck supply and gravel supply to work that one out. Burrawa is currently underway, so our intention is to have that fully expended by end of financial. So is Harden. Harden's actually completed. Young reseals, we've actually got an actual on Young reseals, which is 106,462. We have an actual expenditure of around 725,000. As you've noted, that figure of 76,000 is end of March, and we had some creditors' payments coming in April. So we're up to 723. That reflects about 90% of the work completed. We've only got one road project that we're going to hold over into the next year. Young roads sealed. I think they're sitting at around 95% spent or 95% completed. There's two streets in town that didn't get completed. That was Nee and Emily, and they are proposed to be rolled into next year's program as well.
Excellent. The item 106,521 Young street lighting, $45,000. I noticed that there's no expenditure at all. They're proposing to expend that by the end of the year. Where will that $45,000 be expended, and how many street lights will it provide?
Through the Mayor, we're just currently working through a design process at the moment. I don't know whether the council's aware, that's now a two-step process. We've got to get designs done first, and then we've got to go out to market for the actual construction of. So we're just trying to work through the design process first before we move into the next phase.
Will they be, Mark, will they live? Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. General Manager. My apologies. Is that work likely to be completed by the 30th of June?
I don't believe so.
So the $45,000 will be partly expended?
Some of it will be spent on design, and then the balance we're hoping to get transferred into the next financial year. That's what we're proposing.
Thank you. The 6 on page 9 of 12, 600047, 60048, the hardened footpaths and young footpaths. I noticed that there's a relatively small amount expended against those items. I note I walked up the lovely footpath at the front on the way here, so I know the one at Young's been substantially commenced. I guess we're not showing that we won't be finished those other ones. Will they be completed by the 30th of the 6th?
Through the Mayor, hardened paths are envisaged to be spent by the end of June. We're probably going to be about 50 to 60% spent on young paths.
On young paths.
That is correct.
Also on page 9, the 600317 Burrangong Creek Pathway Drought Stimulus. We've spent 37,000 out of 82. Are they likely to be completed by the end of the financial year?
We're not envisaging completion, but we're also talking to the grant body about getting an extension or a reduction in scope or an extension in time so we can complete those works.
When are we likely to get the response back before the end of the financial year?
That is what our hope is.
Wonderful. Boorowa Sewer Mains Capital 60022, $131,500. There appears to be no costs against it at all, yet it's going to be fully expended. I'm just, Plummer, please tell me how that's going to happen. And also, is that relining or are they new lines?
So the Boorowa contract is the relining contract, and we have appointed the contractor and the works are currently being undertaken.
Thank you. The 60078 sewage treatment CCTV and security upgrade, $50,000. No expenditure to date, yet we're anticipating 100% of that will be expended. Will that be completed by the end of the financial year? My apologies, on page 11 of 12. 60078 number is sewer, $50,000.
At this stage, no.
So that won't be completed. We won't be.
No.
Those works won't be done. On page 12 of 12, 106200. I've asked before, but I haven't really got an answer. What's that $60,000 for? And we haven't spent any of it yet. We're anticipating spending 100% of it. Can I please be told what it's going to be spent on?
That item is various office furniture across the 3 offices. There has been a small spend that needs to be reallocated from operational into capital. But it's not envisaged the whole 60,000 will be spent. It has been a historic number that's rolled forward.
So there will be expenditure against it.
There will be expenditure against it.
Thank you. Also on the same page 12 of 12, 106560 and 106561, $15,000 and $60,000 respectively. I've spoken with the director in regards to the $60,000, so I know what it's for. But I noticed that there's no costs incurred, and yet we're anticipating it's going to be spent. Will that money be spent? Will those new items be purchased before the end of the year? On page 12 of 12. Engineering office equipment scanner, $15,000, and engineering operations servo equipment, $60,000.
The intention is to purchase that equipment this financial year.
Just to interrupt, what is the survey equipment?
So we do have survey equipment that we use for locating our assets, and every time when we do any work on assets, we go and survey the point so that we can build up a database of all the assets that we have across Hilltops, because a lot of that information is not well documented. The survey equipment that we have currently has reached its end of its life, and it's not a certified survey equipment. We can't do certifications of land acquisitions, etc., but it is sufficient to ensure that we can mark our assets. And when we have our assets detailed, then we know next time we're going to do work what's there.
Any other questions or in relation to other councillors in regard to the report that's there? Councillor Armstrong ticked off a number. I'd imagine a few had marked down. Councillor Flannery.
Just on the governance office, the civic leadership, and its which Councillor Armstrong alluded to, is furniture replacement and is governance. Is that the correct place for it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding it's just been a rolling fund that has been utilised where need be, where furniture does break, does get utilised. It's just one of those items just to budget there in case we need it. We wouldn't want to come back to you for office chairs.
Okay, thank you. Most of the office chairs I've sat in, they seem fine, but anyway. The other question I had was on plant replacement, construction, heavy plant, capital. I noticed we've budgeted to, I think, 243 is the budget. Expenditure to date, I think, in the grey column, 0. So is there heavy equipment we're still looking to replace on page 11 of 12?
105030.
Yes, and there's same questions for light vehicles and truck replacement capital. Is that the one we voted that was part of the accident?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are intending, as part of heavy equipment, is to replace the truck which came to council, which was involved in an accident. And then in terms of light vehicles, we will replace them. We've reduced the number of light vehicles and will only replace them as and when required. And we've identified 4 that will be when they are required to be replaced. In terms of in the capital program, there is also an amount for 2 graders. The first grader that we have has done over 9,000 hours and is at its end of its life and needs to be replaced. And the second grader has always had trouble, and we've had quotes that say that it is going to be in excess of $100,000 to repair that, and it's only done 5,000 hours, but it is in a state where we have to replace several significant pieces of equipment, and they need to be replaced. And once they get replaced or repaired, it has been indicated to us that it will only last another 2 years. So what we're intending there is to resell the equipment as is, which we're predicting would only fetch about $40,000, and add that to the grader that we're going to get. So we will be reducing our grader fleet from 9 to 8, but we will have a new grader that will have more life out of it.
So those replacements will come to the June meeting, I assume?
Once we finalise the costs, but we're putting the costs here because when we place the orders, it will be committed funds, but it will be coming to council before we do those significant purchases.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I had a question on, I think it was a deferral. I can't find it now. There was, it was Roberts Park. I think there was a deferral which is getting rolled into this year, but I can't find it now. That's correct. I was wanting to know what it was.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is the lights.
Thank you for that. Any further questions in regard to the report, councillors? Councillor Stadmiller.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions for the General Manager of the
I have to turn your volume up a tad, councillor. We're having trouble picking you up.
Is that better, Mr. Mayor?
That's a bit better. You'll have to speak up, councillor.
Sure. Yep, that's all right. Okay, just a couple of questions that I have for the General Manager and the staff, if they can help out.
Councillor, we're having trouble whether it's our end. We'll just check and see.
We're just trying to increase the volume at our end and to see if that can then help.
I'm speaking quite loudly now. Is that any better?
Try now, councillor.
Yes, I'm speaking quite loud now. Is that any better?
You're just a whisper at this end, but if that's the best we can do, that's the best we can do.
That's all right. I'll try and speak really loud. The dog pound on page 7, I was just wondering what has caused us to have to build a new facility and how many cats and dogs that will house once it's completed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will have the Director of Planning respond to your question relating to why the dog pound needs to be replaced, and answer in relation to number of animals. Thank you.
Through you, General Manager. The dog pound itself, the designs have been drawn up and they are in comparative with the Cootamundra recent pound, which services their pound efficiently. The exact number of dogs or cats that can be housed in this facility, I'm not 100% sure on. I can provide that information later or provide the copy of the designs as well for councillors to have a look at. It does service, the one in Cootamundra does service their LGA, so, and with similar LGA numbers, it should cater for our particular facility as well.
Okay. The rugby club lights at Harden was one of the first programs to be given funding very early on. Just wondering where we're up to with that and what the cost of that will be.
So there was a resolution through council. It is a funded project, and the resolution was that we combine those two projects into a single project for $550,000. The funding is still available, and we have got the funding, which we will continue to do the work into the next year. So both of those, the Harden swimming pool lights as well as the Roberts Parks lights, will be completed. There is sufficient funds due to the fact that we've been able to combine those two funds, and that project will be delivered, and the funding is still there.
Okay. Just one more, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, yep.
The Jugyong swimming pool has a lack of shading at the moment, and I wanted to see what the other councillors thought about allocating some funding, whether it be in part or full, to add that to the budget to provide some shade sales or a large shade sale over the Jugyong pool.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interject. That would be a budget bid for the next report, I believe, Councillor Stadmiller. So if you can leave that question to the next report, thank you.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Just in relation to the question to the dog pound, I see correspondence today in an email saying that we satisfied the standard. I believe that was the email we got from staff. That correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The facility itself does meet a standard for the dogs. The cats are within temporary housing in those carrier containers. They would require an upgrade because it is in a just also in one of those site shed type facilities. The pound itself, we've had a couple of injuries because of this just loose wires and things. So they will need to be rectified.
I'm still going to move that it's deferred, but anyway, thank you.
One final
Councillor
question. There's still approximately $70,000 to be expended for small and minor plant. Could we please be advised of what that is for and whether that'll occur this year?
So the allowance for small and minor plant is things such as blowers, whippersnippers, etc., that we require as and when throughout the year. We have recently purchased some minor equipment which is not indicated in the March report, but we have been purchasing it, and that amount allows us, as the small equipment, because it's not economic to replace, we can replace it during the year.
So that $70,000 has or will be spent. There's no ability to cut any costs there?
At this stage, I cannot confirm exactly how much has been expended. That I can come back to you on, but we have expended some of that money.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, obviously with some of these items, they're very operational items that that makes an allowance at the beginning of the year. Obviously, we make purchases throughout the year. If it's not spent, it does just go to the bottom line. It's saved for that year, particularly.
Thank you for that. If I have any further questions in relation to this item, if not, someone would like to move that we come out of committee. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Horton. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you, councillors. Okay, councillors, we've had questions asked and answered by staff to the best of their ability, so I hope everyone's enough for that result. So on that note, I will put the recommendation that's in front of us, councillors. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moves me on to the next item, which is on page 31. 31, thank you. Which leads us into the endorsement of Hilltops Council 2021-2022 operational plan, budget, revenue policy, fees and charges for public exhibition. Councillors, the reports in front of us and the recommendations are there. I'll get a mover and a seconder before we go anywhere. Move Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Flannery. Thank you. Okay, councillors, I'd probably suggest that we'd do the same thing, and I'll move that we move into committee. Seconded Councillor Flannery. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We are now in committee, and I'll open the floor to questions.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make one comment. As I mentioned earlier, through the checking processes, on page 48 for the water usage charges, there was a transposition error for the non-residential water usage for Young. The figure that you see before there was 98,580. The actual figure is 992,820, which gives a total of 4.79 million, 2,954. The transposition error was a 9 was missing in the number that drove the per unit cost, which was only picked up through review. This error oversight was only within that table. The correct figure is in the budget documents. So it's just a representation. We will fix that for the report should it be resolved to go out. The one other major item is that when we talk about the interest charge on overdue amounts, currently it's only sitting in one section at 6%, where it should be across all the sections to be applied. Having said that, the interest charge is not automatically applied. There are circumstances where leniency can be made for hardship. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. And the trouble with that water area, there was my memory serves me right, there's some problem there last year with some of those numbers. Anyway, very good. So we're in committee and I'm in councillors' hands, and the floor's open. Councillor Flannery, looks like you're ready to...
Mr. Mayor, I'll just, I guess, move that we, but the number of questions that were sent round by councillors relating to some of the capital expenditures, I'm happy to read them out, or I can refer to the emails. So there was a question in relation to item 105640. Then there was 600 351.
So you're wanting the answers for
Well,
everyone? Or?
yes, please.
Okay. Oop. So can you reference the question, councillor, to aid?
The first one was 105640. The second one was 600 351. I think these were actually by Councillor Wallace. 105050, 106 200. Actually, they were the quarterly review. Sorry, I'll go on to 105 503.
Could we all have our phones off, please? Mine included.
Day works.
I said that. Then 600, 323, 106, 140 were the current budget, and then they were added to with 600, 373, I think it was, and 600, 372 from memory.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, item 600, 323 has funding been sought. This item, the dual and oval bore, is a budget bid from the cricket club and provided by staff for your consideration. It will need to be recognised as successful or unsuccessful bid. At this stage, the funding source recognised is revenue. So that's that. That's that item. So the dual and oval bore. The second number that you mentioned was 600, 372 and 600, 373, which relates to the cycling report and the arts centre report. Is that they're the ones you're referring to? Both of these items are budget bids with the funding source to be determined today, whether it comes from revenue or loans, or the bids are just unsuccessful.
And then I also note there was a question relating to 600, 323, which
that was dual and oval ball. I'm sorry.
Well, 105, 503, I think that is grant funding, I think. Is that correct? And it's been carried over?
I'm sorry, which number is it?
105, 503. I think that's grant funded, which has been carried over.
I'll just pass to the CFO.
No, that one's not. The Roberts Park lighting was grant funded. The disabled toilet was not. It is something that we could look at applying for funding under the latest round of the Stronger Country Communities Fund.
So wasn't there isn't in the 500,000 referred to by Boleen, that was, my memory was there's 120,000 for lights at Roberts Park, 160 at the pool. And then I thought the balance was about 200, which was disabled toilet, and they're all grant funding. Well, what was the balance of the 500,000 you were alluding to?
So the balance was for the amenities at the Harden swimming pool. This is for these amenities by the soccer club.
Could you elaborate? Sorry.
So for the $550,000, which was part of that grant funding money, there was an amenities for the Harden swimming pool, and then the lights at Roberts Park and the lights at the Harden swimming pool. That's not this, the sporting facilities Harden Roberts Park disabled toilet refers to the soccer club building.
And so what are the amenities at the swimming pool? Because there was 400,000 to be allocated from drought funding for amenities. I wasn't aware of additional funding for amenities at the swimming pool. There was an application or a request from the swimming club for a disabled toilet, and then one of our previous directors knocked that on the head because I think we were 30 square centimetres short of the recommended area and said we couldn't meet the budget for 30 square centimetres.
I'll have to take that one on notice, Councillor Flannery, but that line item there, that 105,503 is for additional disabled amenities at the soccer club.
Okay, thank you. So for clarification through the Mayor to the Mr General Manager, what will be the process if we vote these through with the budget? Will they come back to council, given we're short of funds and they are to come from revenue? Is there advice from the General Manager as to whether we should remove these items from the budget, vote them through and then leave them subject to a quarterly budget review?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that is a decision for you, Council. I don't want to avoid the question. Obviously, we're looking for savings where we can. Tonight's resolution, you will only resolve a budget after the 28 days public consultation. Tonight, these are tonight as best we could. We've encapsulated what we understood was the thoughts and understandings on what you, the councillors, would want in a budget for discussion with the community. So tonight this is going on to put it out on public exhibition. So it's not a decision. You can knock them out tonight before the public exhibition. Given that this document is out there, public submissions may be that if you don't want us to put it in the public submitted document, the document for public submission, I can't talk for the community. They may ask for them to be put back in, but the decision is not tonight. The decision is to put it on public exhibition in its current form, or with any amendments that you can agree, obviously in the committee of a whole, that we take notes and we modify for those before public exhibition.
Further question. I know, well, could we be advised of the basis of the $50,000 for the bore at Doolan Oval for a start? Having put a few bores down, is there any view as to whether there's water there? Does that include equipping the bore? What are the current costs that we're spending on water for that oval?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 50,000 was put into the budget for investigation, etc. purposes, because there is significant risk around if there is water, if there isn't water, is the quality of the water sufficient? This was a request from the cricket club, and we've just facilitated by putting it into the budget. The concern with the cricket club is that when it's really dry and hot, they receive recycled water, so do other ovals in the area, and the sewage treatment plant isn't able to supply sufficient recycled water. So this is more an investigative stage until we can ascertain if there is water and if the quality of the water is sufficient. This is a bid from the cricket club, and we've just put it in the budget for consideration.
Thank you.
So what does 50,000 for investigative purposes? I mean, normally you investigate by getting a driller in and they stick their auger in, and if they find water, they good luck. If they don't, I mean, do we have any land? Do we have to get approval, concurrence from the high school if we need to go there? I mean, it seems a pretty risky venture, I would have thought.
Very risky, and I think we did talk about the possibility, even if you found water, just how that water would be suitable for a cricket pitch, and so there's a number of questions about it.
Mr. Mayor, just in regard to that, I do note in the 10-year financial plan there's about $15.6 million, a little bit further down the track for future councils to renew the sewage treatment works at Harden. I'm just wondering if there's insufficient water at the moment coming out of the treatment works. Is that insufficient water to water all council properties, or are there other properties other than council properties that are watered with it?
Sorry, just through the Mayor, the golf club is also under the same scheme.
Is Doolan Oval watered before the golf club or after the golf club?
They share a reservoir, so I wouldn't say before or after. They share the same resource.
So the water comes out of the same resource as the golf club comes out of.
Yeah. That's correct.
Can I
That's all rolls.
Through the Mayor, pardon me, Mr. Mayor. Taking up on Councillor Flannery's comment about bores, Murrumborough High School spent a small fortune actually putting down bores not far from Tim Doolan Oval without success. It's just my comment.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we'll go. Move on. Any other questions?
So just on that point, Mr. Mayor, again, this is your voting for the document to go out. I will need your guidance. Do you want that line item to stay in for the document that is to go out when you come to vote on what goes out tonight, or are we to leave it in the document? I understand this is the committee of the whole, but this is a decision you can make to leave it in or out.
Mr. Mayor, from my personal point of view, I believe we should take out the disabled toilets, the bore, the library money, and the velodrome. I think we've got enough on our plate for the next. We've deferred $15 million expenditure, I think it is, to go for next year.
Disability toilets was the first one. The second one was.
Well, we're building new toilets
Yep.
100 metres away.
I understand that, yep. Second one, I just didn't give it the other, sorry, that's all.
The bore at at Doolan Oval.
Yeah, the bore, yep.
And then I think the library, the $30,000 in library funding and the velodrome, I think they can easily go back into the following year's budget we don't have any capital for them.
I'm back on page here. When you said library, I was just wondering what the library was.
Yeah,
Nothing
what's
to
the
library.
The
It's an
arts,
art centre, yeah. No, that's,
cultural and arts
I was gonna
centre.
say, the $1.5 million for libraries borrowed.
No, well, there's a
Spent.
$30,000 for cultural and
Yep, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah,
expenditure, and then 90,000 for a velodrome.
Just so everyone is aware, the library money's there. The library money is for replacement of books and resources, etc. And through the briefing process, there was the consensus that stayed. The other bids is the cultural and art centre, but not the library. I just want to make that clear for everyone. Thank you.
I'm assuming the cultural and arts precinct is to be within that new library complex. Is that
Could I speak to these? Maybe.
with Councillor Wallace.
These were both the regional art gallery. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
But the regional art gallery, this $30,000 was for a study into the location of a regional art gallery and performing arts centre. Back when I was the chair of the arts committee, which seems to have become fairly redundant in recent times, but back in my day we did a cultural master plan for Young, and I think that holds for the whole of the Hilltops. It initially identified a library was the first thing was required through pretty extensive lobbying. We're getting a library. And these are the next things that we need to look at. Now, we worry about attracting professional people to town, and people say to me, and this is what I said the other day, is that I told them that Jurgyong had been, nominated as a tourism destination. They said, "Oh, they were very surprised. That was in the Hilltops, because it was a fair way away from where the area they considered to be the Hilltops." And they said, "Oh, what else is there to see in the Hilltops?" And I went, "Oh, well, don't know." The tourist attractions are minimal. So we've got, what I was suggesting was, from a cycling perspective, we do feasibility studies, and these may end up being things that need to be taken on by private enterprise, but into rail trails, velodrome and mountain biking tracks. So that was one investigation. The other one was to actually locate and do not a feasibility study, but a rough costing of the art gallery and the performing arts centre, two different things. I think we've got to spend money now. You look at the way the federal government's doing things. If while we're tight, we've got to spend it. And I spent the other day speaking to move other items out of the capital budget, which I know some of them have. I agree with you that certain other ones need to be, and I support the Mayor in deferring the pound, which would more than cover the cost of these items. I think we need to move ahead on these things and get going. I mean, we gave $26,000 last week, which still has to be argued here, I suppose, to an organisation to raise $20,000, private organisations to raise $20,000. So I think we actually need to do something which has a bigger vision.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace.
Could I also go on with some other questions,
yes,
Mr. Mayor, while I have the floor?
Yes.
Thank you. I have some concern about the long-term financial plan. So when I asked about the increase in the employee costs for next year, it being 25% more than they are for the following year, 25% more than for next year, I was told we haven't looked too closely at that. Now, if this is going on public exhibition, I have some concerns that we'd be putting a figure like that out there, because to me it looks like the wage bill's gone up a little bit from this current year, and that would seem like a normal progression. And the conversation back was about capitalisation of certain labour, but surely that's already budgeted into next year. Why is there a greater than 25% look at the following year? And I don't think, just because we haven't had a look at it, I don't think that's adequate to really put out to the public.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the work done to identify what capital works is in with the next year budget. That is a separate process that needs to be undertaken. My concerns about the projections out for the long-time financial plan is it's auto-generated based upon the raw costs as going forward. When we look at the following year's budget, depending on how successful we are with the short to medium term process to utilise as much of our workforce on capital grants projects to assist repairing the bottom line in the short term. As I've articulated, it is a short term, at best a medium term measure. We will need to consider all of the things that have been raised recently in the public about service levels, about whether or not a rate variation is to be required and to be considered. That is a body of work that is yet to be done. So I agree with you, Councillor Wallace. They are the projected figures if we don't capitalise and we don't look at some of the problems that face us.
I still don't quite understand, but anyway, okay. Going on, I did send an email, admittedly only a couple of hours ago, about the other expenses item, 5.6 million. I was just wondering if you could give us some detail on that, please.
I'll pass to the CFO through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The other expenses line item covers items like insurance, utilities, telephone and internet, our emergency services levy, councillor expenses, donations, and the various sort of miscellaneous and sundry items that aren't covered by employee costs and materials and contracts.
Could we get some detail, written detail on that at some point, please? Thank you.
That can be provided.
Thank you. Going on, the young swimming pool in the capital budget, we've already spent over $5 million on this, more than $2 million over budget. What do we need another 40,000 to be spent on?
Through the Director of Infrastructure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is that is money that is left over we are finalising a few things that we need to capitalise with the funding agent, and that's the amount that we still need to claim. And we're working with the funding agent. We have added some racks, etc., so that we can expend those funds. When we get funding, we tend to, if we've underspent on the funding, the philosophy there is we go back to the funding agent and say, well, we can do these 3 things or whatever, and then we do a deed of variation if they are amenable to it.
Okay, thank you. My other questions relate to the wellbeing pillars. Maybe I should leave that till a bit later, or should I keep just going on now? Okay, I'll keep going. So the first one's on page 84, 1.3.1.1. It talks there about an arts and cultural plan and an arts and cultural policy. Is there some time frame on these documents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the document that you have there at the back is the document that was adopted at the beginning of the term of council. I'm not aware of when we've planned to do that work. I don't have an answer for that. This is what was envisaged. Part of the budget is what we intend to be able to do. So I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Page 106, 3.2.1.1.5, it says there the measure or indicator is to partner with Centroc to undertake studies to gain a great knowledge of local industries capable of value adding. Are we still a member of Centroc? And
I believe there's still an association with those. I don't believe we are a member. However, these measures and indicators were struck some years ago.
So I think we need to change that.
It's certainly on the agenda for the revision of the CSP and the DP in the new council.
Also, on page 132, that's fine, but shouldn't we be changing it before this document goes out? Because it's just not right.
I'm somewhat boxed in by the document. This was the document that was adopted as the 4-year plan, so we're somewhat beholden to.
So we don't. So there's no use in me going through and trying to change any of these things. We have in previous years. We've always done it annually.
Oh, okay. Well, I was on that last year. We didn't, but I don't think we had much time last year, to be honest, and to be fair on everyone. My understanding was the DP particularly was struck, and they were the measures that were were set, and I have talked about the difficulties with some of the measures on how they they're transparent.
I mean, if it's an annual operating plan, surely the plan needs to change. Otherwise, we're just using one that's 4 years old.
Certainly, we can make those changes.
I think that'd be wise. Further to that, page 132, 5.3.2.4, talks about responding to customer and community complaints. Now, I said nowhere else in the plan, as far as I can see, does it relate to customer service, and this has been a bugbear for most councillors over this term. I think we need to include a measure or indicator that we're actually going to have a customer service policy, because we've spent tens of thousands of dollars employing consultants to no end. After over 5 years of council, we still don't even have a policy, let alone any measurable key performance indicators. So I think we need to include a measure in there about customer service, having a customer service policy and benchmarks.
We'll make that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. I'm going to Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up and thank you to Councillor Wallace for putting forward those comments on the expenditure for the Cultural and Community Arts Centre and the bike track. Look, I absolutely agree with him. I just think given the workload we have got for the coming financial year and completing capital projects, I just think we need to focus on getting the money spent and then probably move realistically into a 2022-23 budget, but that's up to councillors to determine. I just can't see where we're going to get the staff time or inputs. And I mean, I'm not being flippant when I say I long gave up reading those operational plan things. They're just, sadly, I just think most people don't look at them. Most ratepayers don't look at them. I've given up as a councillor trying to get them amended because I think they just get cut and pasted over, and they're not deemed as reality. But I absolutely agree with Councillor Wallace that they're out of date and they don't reflect what's going on. So I don't know whether it's a sad indictment on us as councillors or council, but they certainly need changing. But they don't reflect where we're at. Me as an individual councillor would like to see those items that I brought forward to be put on the wish list or the agenda for next year, but I just don't see where we're going to get the resources to deal with them in the coming year.
Can I just provide a bit of clarity around that? Sorry, I didn't mention this earlier, but when I brought this up last week, I foresaw that these are going to be consultants' reports, okay? They're not, and as much as I don't like spending money on consultants, but that's what they're going to be because we have to have somewhere to start. So I actually see the input from staff being minimal. If they need to write a brief, I'll write the brief. I mean, it's just, it shouldn't take long in terms of staffing. And I actually wondered whether they're actually capital expenditure items in any event. Could they not be operational?
It depends if you go ahead. The principle I use is those types of planning type bits. You capitalise them on the view that you're going to utilise them. At the point in which you decide you're not going to utilise them, you expend them because it does form part. In my view, it does form part of the capital.
Thank you for that, General Manager.
Either way, they've got to come out of the budget. So.
Questions?
Councillor.
Just in regard to line item 105555 and 105556, Jugiong small pools filtration, Jugiong large pool filtration. I realise that one of these is a carryover from this current year because we can't get it done. But I'm just wondering whether there's a gross inefficiency in having two separate filtration systems for this pool, and whether we might be able to do it smarter by having one filtration system and reducing our operating costs, because I'd imagine with two filtration systems there's twice the amount of pumps and twice the amount of electric cost associated with that, and twice the number of dosing plants potentially. So I just think that we need to be smart about how we spend our money, and duplicating filtration plants at the one location doesn't seem to be very smart to me. Is there opportunity to defer this $331,000 and review the design potentially build one filtration plant. My big concern is that if there's if the water quality in one pool is unsatisfactory and people can't use it, council's probably more likely to close the whole pool than that one particular part of the pool. Ergo, we might as well have one filtration plant and potentially save ourselves some costs either up front or down the track.
Pass to the Director of Infrastructure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are currently in the process of having a review of all the pools. The money has been maintained in the budget. This is a historical solution, I guess, that has been put forward, that we do a separate filtration system, and that is in line with the fact that the large pool is much larger than two smaller pools, and the challenge there is around the chlorination levels. So if we separate the two small pools from the large pool, then we need to chlorinate that and filter the water independently. It is something that's under review, and we've maintained the budget allowance in there, and pending the review and the outcomes of the review, a report will be brought back to council about what the review outcomes are, and that's one of the options we will be investigating.
Thank you for that, Director.
And thank you for that. Also, a question in regards to the $945,232 on line item 106760, Burrawa Urban Renewals, SCF. I'm just wondering whether there's any opportunity. I do have some recollection of asking this question on about 4 or 5 other occasions, never getting an answer. Whether there's an opportunity to shift those funds to water and sewer infrastructure, renewals or new infrastructure, if it can be used for water and sewer. I note that would effectively fund the 100% of the sewer renewals for the next 4 years and substantially offset the next 4 years worth of water renewals at Burrawa.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a council report that allocated the funds in June 2017 as to what that stronger community funding should be, and that one line item for the Burrawa urban renewals was part of that. Now, if we want to change the funding, I would have to go back to the funding agreement and see if that is possible to be changed, and it's something we could consider.
I think that, as I said, I've asked this question on a number of occasions, never got an answer. There's been a lot of people going back to ask whether that could be changed or not. I don't know whether they've ever been able to get that far. Can we please do that? Because I can see that there are significant issues in regard to the water supply fund and sewer fund at Burrawa being able to be considered sustainable. This $945,000 would significantly assist both those funds in terms of being able to meet the cost of asset renewals and to maintain a reasonable level of cost for the ratepayers. At the end of the day, someone's got to pay for it, and it'll be the users of the system that have got to pay for it. So I think that there's a huge benefit potentially for the community if they can use that $945,000 for water and sewer infrastructure renewals. And I'd suggest that that's something that should be of the utmost urgency.
Thank you, Councillor, and I agree with you. We talked about that before, and it was listed in some documentation as going towards the urban renewals, which I thought would water and sewer would fall under. And then you turn over to the final page in page 76, but it's still itemised as Works Depot relocation plan. I'd just suggest that there was a resolution against that, and that be eliminated from all paperwork, and we can work on the sewage and water. Councillor Manchester.
Actually, I was just about to bring that up, Mr. Mayor. I thought that had been, I was under the impression that we had done investigations about changing what that funding could be used for. And I know it was initially down as the depot, that was initial, but then we said that wasn't going to go ahead. And I thought we actually went out and got permission to use it elsewhere. It was going to be used in Burrawa, there's no doubt about that, but I just thought it was that we'd already got that permission, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, thank you, and no doubt staff can follow that up to where it is. Councillor Flannery?
Mr Mayor, look, I've spent a week looking at this budget on and off, and I look at it and think we've all been advised that we're not making the ends meet. I look at the programs, I look at the expenditure, and I think, where can we cut money? And it's not easy because so much of our expenses are tied to grants, and I think we've really, there's just not many easy answers. We're sitting here and there's a lot of nods, there's some suggestions, a lot of nods. I think we have actually got to make some decisions on whether we're going to cut some programs or some funding, defer some projects. I don't see anything about productivity gains. I've been harping on for years, I think, through various councils about measuring what we do on the roads. It's by far our biggest expenditure out of the general fund, yet we never seem to be able to say how many kilometres of road we do or don't achieve for hours of work done. We've got to get some metrics around it. It's we should be able to say we want a 10% productivity gain out of our plant and equipment we're buying. We've got 9 graders, I was told. We're going to cut it back to 8. Each time they're bigger and better, but I never see that we get a bigger and better return for that investment. I know if I buy equipment, I want to see more productivity out of it, yet we don't seem to be able to get it. We've really got to get some metrics on what we're achieving. I'm not suggesting we're underperforming, but we need to be able to say to the overseers, this is what we want. We need a 10% gain for the investment we're making, and they've got to make it happen. So I think that's got to happen. I agree absolutely with Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Manchester about the Boorowa money. I think if you said to the ratepayers in Boorowa, do you want a brand shiny new works depot, or do you want to cut to your sewer and water expense, or a reinvestment in sewer and water, they would probably think it's a very good investment. I support Councillor Wallace's investigation. I think tourism is a big winner. I would actually like to see the sale of the sale yards tied to expenditure on the $30,000 cultural and arts centre and the bike track. I think if we can tie those two together, so if we can sell the sale yards, do some asset sales and use that money for the 2 programs Councillor Wallace has put forward, I think that would be good. I just think the money on the dual and oval bore is a dead duck, and I think we should remove the disabled toilets from Roberts Park from this budget. But short of that, I'd like to see that we just cut all expenditure. We asked for a productivity gain of 10% from the budget, so all the roads, they have to achieve the same amount of work, but we don't know what the work is. Unfortunately, it just comes out as 380,000 Cunningar Road, 180,000 this road. No one's ever really says what kilometres and what's going to be achieved, and I think we should be putting it on the staff's head that we get some productivity gains.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, and I'll still get the floor open to any councillors who have got any comments, and then we might decide when we come out of committee to put the budget out on public display. Then we've all got 28 days before we come back at the end of the month to adopt the budget, and I would probably suggest that that's when the in and outs will be voted on that night, as opposed to tonight as to what's going out to the community. So we probably need to keep that in mind. But while the conversation's going and about things that might come in and might come out, I've mentioned before, I'm a firm believer that the email I saw today says that our pound is up to a standard, and I would have that $200,000 deferred, and I'll also be asking that the $100,000 that we give away in the financial assistance scheme in hundreds and $200s and $500 lots is abolished. I believe that $100,000 basically goes in the air. We get no recognition and we get no results from it from a council. In a perfect world, yes, but as I said the other day, we're far from a perfect world. So there's $300,000 in ideas that I'll be throwing around later on, but that's just my ideas. Councillor Stadmiller, did I see?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Just a question about 600370 Technology 1 remediation project. $720,000. Question for the General Manager, what work will be undertaken for that? And is there anyone entertaining at a staff level about employing some Tech One specialists within our own staff workforce to overcome the issues we're facing there? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the CFO had carried with the Director of Infrastructure in our planning team, so I'll ask the CFO to make comment and the Director of Infrastructure to add any commentary as needed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Tech One remediation line item that you're seeing in the capital budget is actually the deferral of unspent funds from the prior year. We've done some investigation and determined that we can capitalise those. The remediation itself is being used to re-implement modules of the system that were not fully implemented, or there were elements of it that were either incorrectly implemented or implement those modules that were never implemented. So one of the first ones that we are doing is the budget module. As part of that, we're actually moving the line of sight from an executive level all the way down through the organisation, so that every person in the organisation will be able to see budgets. It also includes the asset management module, and there's some 19 priority projects that were identified in a health check that are being worked through. Not all of the 19 will be addressed. The funding was only to address some number of those based on the prioritisation, and of the 19, not all were directly Tech One related. Some were cultural, staff culture related as well. So that is an ongoing process at the moment, and the work is being tendered out through RFQs and RFTs to the relevant specialists. That includes staff training at a manager level, so that training can be pushed down to the staff.
Thank you, CFO. Elaine, do you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of how we are structuring the remediation of Tech One, it is driven by internal resources. So the manager major projects is treating this as a project. It will be capitalised. So any staff time that is being applied to this will be capitalised, as well as any expertise that we need to bring into the remediation will be capitalised as well. And the intent is that we deliver as much as we possibly can internally with the internal experts, and the focus is working with the user to understand the information and configuration that they require, so that the system will be able to be used by everyone in the organisation to better improve and hopefully get efficiencies in terms of how we do our business.
Thank you for that, Director.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rolls.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've listened to the discussion going backwards and forwards, and if I may, I'd just like to say that I most probably oppose the gallery being in, and also the velodrome, and also the cutting of the financial assistance, which those small grants are very, very important to a wide number of people within our community. I think we mightn't see it in big banners that we get recognition, but we certainly do on the community side, and we're forgetting about the community in this case. I'd also, I think, oppose cutting out the pound. We've talked about this ever since I was on council, and the pound might meet minimum standards, but I'm a bit of the basis that if we look after our animals and we show compassion there, we're also showing compassion for our people. So on all those three, I think the idea of the arts is something to look forward to the future, but $90,000 we're looking at for a plan that might come to nothing, just as the Currawong. How much money did we spend on planning for that? 20,000, 25,000 was it? And I just think at the moment, when we haven't got the money, we think that for the future, but certainly not for this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, I'll just respond to one matter in regard to the community small groups getting a little bit of money, and I have concerns about that sometimes, that if they depend that much on that little bit, then, I don't know whether they should be holding that event and giving you propensity, as was shown, to give $26,000 or whatever it's going to cost in borrowings to a private fundraiser for a state educational facility. I have no surprise that you support that 100,000 funding, and that's you're quite entitled to have that opinion. It's just that you and I most definitely disagree on that, just that one point. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, I wonder what the objection is to a little bit of progress. That's in terms of getting some studies done to try and actually get things going rather than spending monies on things that don't turn a dollar. Question to Councillor Rowe.
At the moment, Councillor Wallace, I think they're very big projects that you're looking at, or I see that you're looking at. Look, we talk all the time about having experts in and expert advice and plans done. I just think at a time when we're looking at our pennies, here we're going to be spending mega dollars on something that I just don't think Hilltops is ready for either of those at the moment. Within the arts community, it's a vibrant arts community. There's a lot. If you go to a regional arts centre, it's an enormous project. And I'm a bit with everybody else who said, let's get what we have done and then look to the future. But for the moment, I just can't support spending that $90,000 on investigations in those two areas.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Flannery.
Just a couple of quick questions, Mr. Mayor, because one's been was on the Harden budget for a while, and I'm surprised it's raised its head again. There's Gaylong Tip Landfill Rehab, $5,000. And then there's Murrumbara Landfill Rehab Capital Work. And then somewhere there's also Harden, so I'm pretty sure Harden and Murrumbara Tip are the same thing. There's Harden Waste Depot Tip Restoration. Before I get an answer on those things, I didn't understand a word that was said about the Tech One response. I mean, I understood the words, but I didn't understand the meaning. I think we want to know, are we spending $970,000 on buying new modules, on a license, on getting people to tell us what we should have got in the first place? I'm pretty sure you can get some very sharp people who could do everything that we haven't got out of Tech One on Excel spreadsheets so far. And I don't say that flippantly. I mean, I don't see any results that, and perhaps staff have seen it, but me as a councillor, I haven't seen one single benefit out of Tech One yet. And I'm pretty sure over $3 million expended. And we're looking to spend $970,000 now. Is it on the cost of the program, or is it on people trying to tell us what we should be getting out of it? That's what we want to know. What are we spending the money on?
Thank you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. What we've tried to articulate is we're trying to get the best out of the product. There has been a substantial amount spent. When we had an independent review on what was needed, it was the budgeted amount of that $800,000 to remediate the system, given all that has gone before over the years since its inception and rollout. The figure that I do need to remind councillors of is the alternate to working through to get the best out of this system is some $2.6 million to go to another system. That was the estimate provided by the independent consultant to jump the system, and it's what we have to live with, and I think we can make the best out of it, and I think we will continue to progress. Some of the information has been better. Unfortunately, it takes time to remediate, building over 5 years into where we have find ourselves.
So when you say we're going to progress, to me the progression is we know what our assets are, we know what our expenses are, we know what our budgeted capital program is, and I think one of the real gains has got to be that we can go in and look at an asset replacement program and look at then doing some borrowings while interest rates are low, So if we can't get on the bus in the next 12 months, we're going to miss the bus and we're going to spend a lot of money. So we've actually got to put some timeframes in place. And that's, I think, what I want to know as a councillor.
Thank you, councillor. And that was brought up at last week's at a council meeting about the asset committee and where that might be getting to on a meeting being called to be updated on those matters. But yeah, all those points that we talk about in Tech 1, it's a weight around our neck, and it will be a weight around our neck for some time to come, it would appear. But hopefully we
can I just have those questions on the tip refurbishment? Because I thought all the money had been spent in Gaylon and what the Harden and Murrumbara rehabs are.
Mr. Crisp, or who's going to respond to those? The local knowledge or director?
So Gaylong, there is some finalisation of work that has already been carried out. We have been in conversation with the EPA and they have had some concerns about how we've refurbished some of the work that we've already done. And that is an allowance to make sure that we can actually fulfill it to the quality and standard that they are requiring. So a lot of this work that we're putting forward is driven with in consultation with the EPA on what we need to be doing in our waste space. And we are having a meeting with them again later this month to have a conversation, further the conversation after we've appointed a consultant to do some work on some of these tips that will then bring us into compliance.
Thank you.
Can we get a report on these conversations rather before we appoint any consultants, please?
Councillor Manchester.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, just a couple of points through it. I certainly agree with Councillor Flannery and Councillor Rolls with regards 600-373 and 600-372. It's all well and good to get a consultant in. It's only going to cost, it's not going to cost us staff time, it's going to cost a consultant. We get a consultant in, they're going to do a report that we know that's going to say, let's put up an art gallery, let's put up a velodrome. I don't believe this is the right time for it. I believe that we've got to be sensible within this budget and future budgets. Both those items, if they did go ahead and and in 10 years' time we built them, they're going to be both of them are high maintenance projects that would that this council does not need any more of. That one, I agree with Councillor Flannery on the disabled toilets at Roberts Park and also the bore at on Doolin Oval. I noticed there is a bore also at Burrumbara Landfill for $15,000. I'm not sure what that's about, but maybe staff could answer that one in a sec. There's also a line item there, and I thought it had been done. The water main extension out to the RFS shed headquarters. I thought that had been done. So that's another question that could. There's $329,000 or $330,000 in the budget for that. I might be wrong about it. And also another question on it is the Gaylong reservoir upgrade. I know it's getting to the stage where it needs to. We do need another reservoir out there. Whether that's something that can be deferred. The Borough one they've answered. And I agree with Councillor Armstrong on the Dugong pool. I think if we can do one filtration plant there, it's a lot of money to spend at Dugong. I'm not saying it doesn't need it, but we certainly need to look at the feasibility of one possible filtration plant to handle the pools down there. So if we just have an answer to the questions, one on the water out to RFS, and what was the other one? The Murrumbara landfill bore capital, $15,000. I think they are the only two. Oh, and the Gaylong reservoir.
Thank you, Councillor. To Director of Infrastructure.
The Murrumbara landfill bore capital, that is a requirement around landfills. We are to put down shallow bores. They are not bores for water. They are shallow bores so that we can see if there's any drainage or runoff. Yeah, it's about measuring contamination, and those bore positions are nominated by the EPA. That landfill we need to make sure that we are sampling where we need to, and we need a board to make sure that there's no leachate going into the ground and contaminating groundwater. So that is what that is about. Can you give me the number for Gaylong Reservoir, please?
60873.
So that is for the duplication of the Gaylong Reservoir, because as noted, the condition of the reservoir is not good, and we need to have a reservoir there before we put another one, before we take the other one out of commission. So we can revisit that, but that was for a duplication of the water reservoir in Gaylong. I don't have the designs on me now, sorry, Councillor.
Is the existing one would be concrete, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. And then the water to the RFS, I believe that project has been completed, so we need to have a look at that.
It's up and operating, so I presumed it had been. I've been wrong before, but I suggest someone needs to take a look at that.
I'm pretty sure the pipes are running.
Yeah.
And just, I presume that all parties that were contributing towards that project contributed, so that's good. All right, Councillor Horton, sorry.
I'm still here, Mr. Mayor.
I know.
And I must say the questions I had on mind have been all answered, some of them twice.
Very good.
See, I just want to say that I'm pretty comfortable with the budget paper. I think the General Manager and his staff have done a big job, a real good job, and they're to be congratulated. Nothing's perfect. It will turn out not to be perfect either, but it's pretty good. And in my view, Councillor Flannery, I agree 100% with. We need to improve our efficiency by 10%. And the only way that'll happen is if we can have the staff more accountable. It starts at the top and the people that run the various teams. So they've got to be more accountable, because we've got to watch our staff numbers, as I mentioned before, and cut our costs and chase our rates. But the document, in my view, is ready to go to the public for 28 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. We've had a fair discussion, councillors. Would someone like to move us out of committee? Move Councillor Manchester.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor.
Before we do, we've got one question.
I'm just so I'm clear in my mind and other councillors are clear in their minds. There's been a lot of discussion, and I believe that there's a consensus that's been reached in regard to a number of items in there, and their removal. Are we voting? Are we going to vote on a draft document that includes those items, or are we going to take those items out beforehand? I mean, I'm happy to move the resolution with those items removed, but I guess I'm not going to do it if I'm not going to be reasonably confident at getting out.
Councillor, my thoughts on the process were that the discussions have been good, and we've talked about some inclusions and some to be excluded. My take on it was I thought that we probably would adopt to have this go out on public exhibition for the 28 days. All councillors got 28 days as well to consider what's been put in front of them about excluding or adding into the budget, and that on the budget night, that's when the voting can take place on each matter. I'm happy to do it either way. I'm in your hands, councillors. If someone's got a consensus, I think they can take something out of this paper tonight. I don't know how much is involved taking it out and having it on exhibition tomorrow. It has to go up.
We can do it for the number that is there. Look, the document is there. If they are taken out, the community are aware that they were in the document, so they can make a comment on them being in or out. We are in your hands, councillors. We can make the amendments as articulated and put the paper out tomorrow.
Someone's going to make a decision. So
I'd like to second Councillor Manchester that we move out of committee, and then I'm happy to move some adjustments to the draft budget for that display.
Thank you. I've had a move and a second to come out of committee. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We are now out of committee.
Mr. Mayor, I move that, I don't have the numbers in front of me. The as foreshadowed, the dual and oval bore be removed from the budget. That the the dual and oval bore is 600,323. The toilets of 120,000, which is 105,503, be removed from the budget. I'd like to move that items 600,372 and 600,373 be subject to the sale of the cattle yards, which has been foreshadowed for 23-24, so that staff may be included only subject to bring the sale of the cattle yards forward, and that we look at the repurposing of the money from the Brewer workshop for water infrastructure at Brewer.
Okay, thank you for Councillor Flannery's moved a carefully worded motion there, councillors, with some items that he'd like to see removed from the budget. I don't know whether I need to foreshadow another motion, because I have some, if we're going to put items on to add or exclude tonight, I've got a couple I'd like to have voted on tonight as well. So, General Manager, I'm just in your hands before I go any further.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my notes were Councillor Horton, and I believe it was Councillor Flannery seconded. Deirdre, was that correct? Councillor Flannery seconded.
That we come out of committee?
Yeah.
Horton and Flannery did the first three, A, B, and C.
Yeah. So if it's in addition to that motion, if you put them, Tony, so Councillor Horton, are you amenable to those being put as part of this motion? Okay, so they can form now part of the motion that is to be voted upon. Then I put it to other councillors to then ask those two councillors for any additions or addendums to be then put to the vote.
I guess I'd better foreshadow something in case this fails and we have this meeting tonight finalised and we haven't got a budget to go out to the community with, and we run out of time as we have only 28 days starting tomorrow, councillors. I just need to make everyone aware of that. If we vote on what's just been put up by Councillor Flannery and it's voted down and we haven't got another foreshadowed motion, we are in a little pickle, you might say. So what I'm going to do is foreshadow the original motion, so as to uncomplicate matters tonight if this first motion is to fail. So I'm happy to foreshadow that motion, Deirdre.
Just so that councillors understand, so the original motion is being moved with the A, B, and C, and those items, the dual and oval, the arts and velodrome, and what was the other one? The cattle yards and subject to. So should this motion as a whole fail, if it is the view of the majority of councillors that the document should go out as is, with all of the items that have already been put forward by various people. It is a safeguard that the Mayor has put in place that should this, with these addendums, the decisions tonight, fail, you will then go out with the original document with all of the stuff included. So that's what you're voting on, whether you're making a decision to publicly exhibit without them or with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a motion put by Councillor Flannery and the mover and the seconder, and for the original, I'm happy for that addition to be there. We've confirmed that. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor Flannery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, just to follow up on what I said earlier, I think I agree with Councillor Wallace and the general view that we need to move the Shire forward, and you've got to spend money to make money. I believe in relation to the disabled toilets at Dual and Oval and the bore, I think that we're putting up new disabled toilets within 100 metres, and I think the bore is just risky. But I think if we can tie one asset sale to the expansion of the others that Councillor Wallace has proposed, then it has purpose. I commend the staff generally on the work that's been done on the budget. I do think we need to sharpen our pencils in a number of areas though. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Anyone like to speak against?
Question?
Question, Councillor Armstrong.
Just in regard to Councillor Flannery's motion, can Councillor Flannery please clarify which sale yards he's talking about and when Council's resolved, at what meeting did Council resolve to sell them?
In the forward projections, I note that I think there's a sale on this, there's a 2023-24 sale yards. Is it an expenditure or a sale? That we certainly discussed at the previous council meeting of selling the sale yards, and we said we'd need to do soil tests. I'm simply saying I'm bringing forward the proposal that we consider the sale yards for sale this year, and if we are able to, we use that money.
So, Mr. Mayor, the $80,000 that's listed in the capital budget in a couple of years' time is actually listed there as expenditure, assuming that they weren't sold. At this point, I don't believe there's been any resolution to sell.
Mr. Mayor, there might be a point of order called that the resolution, if it were to succeed, would commit council to something that council has never resolved to do, and that would mean that the two projects that are referenced by that funds being generated could never be realised. So I think that it's probably invalid.
On reflection, Councillor, I have to agree with what you've just said, given that it's foreshadowed that funding come from that sale, and there's no resolution of council to make that sale. So, Councillor Flannery, would you like to?
Well, I seek clarification, but by virtue of the motion, we'll be resolving to consider the sale of the sale yards.
That's probably. Yeah, I don't know if are we getting the issue too clouded? Yeah, I'm not too sure where to go with this now. What I'm going to do, if
that's the understanding, then I'm quite clear as to how I should vote.
Me too. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else like to speak for? No. Against? Against, Councillor Rolls?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm against it at the moment. Since we have that 28 days for us all to consider, I'd like that time so that we can chill out a bit and decide if this is what we really want. We do have the option in 28 days to come back and revisit and renew and remove whatever we want to. So for that reason, I'm against it.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Having said that, I will now put Councillor Flannery's motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Councillors, being 8 councillors tonight and 4 against, and be very strange for me to vote against myself. So my vote stands. So that motion is lost. So now the foreshadowed motion takes the floor, which is do I have a seconder? Thank you, mate. Councillor Rolls, thank you. And that foreshadowed motion is the original recommendation. I'm just going to Councillor Stadner.
I was just unclear exactly what we were voting on in the original motion. It's been passed now, but code numbers were used and not necessarily the item listed under its name, which added some confusion to that. Just want to make note of that.
Thank you, Councillor. So now I'm going to put the original recommendation. All those in favour? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That concludes our meeting tonight, and I thank everyone for their participation, staff and councillors, and for the conversation we had around